Botswana Thinking Law Podcast, episode 3.
Yeah.
Give you Carlos.
Ibiza Bonon.
Happy.
Hey, Carlos.
How was your week, man?
My week has been very good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ka bona lo khabile se no ga apara ka lawyer.
Oh, well, ka thola ke apara mathekga, Carlos.
Yeah, how lawyers wear like the black skirt or the black bottom and the white shirt. That's you can see my mama lawyer nya ole. Ole ka gendo.
Well, penguins.
Yeah, no, that's you guys. Now today you're out here with the dress and the everything looking good, my dog.
Thank you.
Last week we spoke about Employment Act.
Yes.
And employment law.
Yes.
And there's so much that's been going on this past week about that.
Yes.
First of all, the Choppies thing.
Yes.
4,000 pula.
Yes. Where 3,200 seems to be cash, or at least payment into accounts, and then the 800 is grocery vouchers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then now there's guys who are saying, no, but we're also part of the Choppies group, and no one is saying anything about us. You know, guys in Lekarama, I know Builder Smart is also under Choppies, you know, but they made it very clear we're just talking about the supermarkets, guys. You need to relax. But also now guys are asking questions, I thought they said 4,000 cash, now they're saying 800 pula grocery voucher. Who said I want to buy my grocery at your shop?
You know?
And then now guys are talking about benefits also, on insurance, all sorts of things. There's that, right?
Yeah.
And then something super tragic happened this week as well, where the United States government has decided to cease funding towards a lot of projects, especially charitable organizations, that have to do with issues like HIV. So a lot of those projects have been stopped.
Yes, there's a 90-day, what is it called? A 90-day suspension on all funding. And that suspension effectively says, if money is sitting in coffers that's supposed to be released, it's not to be released. So it's just, it's like, stop everything. Yes. So there wasn't even a grace period. We'll give you a month to wind up your affairs, and then in a month that's when we'll freeze nothing.
Oh man.
It was immediate.
And this is what a lot of people are asking themselves. They're like, but these organizations also, how is it that when America says we're stopping funding today, already tomorrow you guys are saying you've run out of money? It's because they're saying, the funders are saying, whatever is in the coffers, you might have money in the accounts, but stop using that money, stop whatever,
No, not necessarily. It's more of a thing of, so the way funding works, right, is that you will enter into a contract with the donor.
Okay.
And the donor will say, I'm funding you 3,000 pula, for example. And then what happens is the 3,000 pula will be released to you in installments. So let's say the 3,000 pula is supposed to be released to you in installments of 500 pula. To last over 6 months, right? So what happens is you'll get the first 500 pula. That first 500 pula will have budgeted for 2 months, right?
Okay.
Or at least 1 month, right? So then they release the next 500 pula, helayalo. So by the time you reach 6 months, you would have used all the money, but it would have been released to you in installments. So what I'm saying is that you find a lot of situations where the installment is supposed to be coming from the donor. But because of the freeze, that installment is not coming. It's been used for what it was supposed to. Yes.
For that period. So
for that period. Exactly. And a lot of these organizations, you find 100% or a lot of it also goes towards paying the employees at these organizations.
Yeah. And people's jobs are looking very tricky right now.
Yes. It's quite terrible, because if the NGO doesn't have money, then they might not even be able to make salaries for the next 90 days.
So now I'm sitting at home and I'm hearing this. I'm part of one of these NGOs organizations, and I'm thinking, but surely this can't be legal.
Look, there are different levels of issues here, right? The first level is whether or not the organization can sue the donor. To say, no, donor, we don't care what's going on in your country. You said to us, or you will release this money this way. But it is never a good idea for an organization to sue its donors
100%.
because okobadi donor, right?
Yeah.
And then the other level of legality is if the organization doesn't have money and has got employees, it doesn't mean that those employees shouldn't be paid. They actually should be paid because they're employees. And the fact that you've run out of money, that is your own issue. That's when we start discussing issues like retrenchment and things of that nature. But when you go into a retrenchment exercise or you think of liquidation, there is always a consideration for, okay, how you're bringing the employee's contract to an end. So severance and things of that nature still come into play.
Okay, I raise all of this because there's a super important seminar that's coming up very soon.
Yes, the employment law seminar.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 26th of April 2025.
6 days after my birthday. Go well in advance this time.
Yes.
I got the last year. I should have told
Yeah, Carlos.
First year I met Bonolo. I didn't tell her when my birthday was. She didn't know, but somehow she discovered it on her own, and then she baked me some absolutely amazing muffins. And then the following year, so ma kera ya go ga ni tela gore ha re tswa mo seminareng ke go pa di muffins.
Cupcakes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes, so the seminar. Yes, let's talk a little bit about the seminar and how people can be a part of it.
So the employment law seminar, like I said, is coming up on the 26th of April 2025, which is a Saturday, so from 8:30 to 12:30.
Okay.
Completely online, 100 pula per attendee, and we are going to be talking everything employment law in Botswana. We have a Q&A session, so it's only the 4,000 pula where you're getting 3.2 and 800 as vouchers. That is something that is allowed in terms of the law, right?
Okay.
Because the law says that you can pay an employee in kind.
Okay.
And they didn't mean blankets.
Yes.
And I was like, no.
Yes.
Groceries, it can't be alcohol or anything like that.
Yes.
As long as it doesn't go beyond 40% of what this person should be getting from the employer every month. So those are the things that you should look at to say, okay, but the law does allow for payment in kind, but within certain parameters. So those are the type of things that we'll be discussing. Well, in previous employment law seminars, we didn't deal with civil servants. So we didn't deal with the Public Service Act and things of that nature. But this time we are expanding it to include civil servants, people in the armed forces, and so on.
Shout out to the Ministry of Labor. I see they've been posting on their Facebook page just videos, a few things with the public sector.
Yes.
They spoke about severance, they spoke about pensions, I believe.
Yes.
So, and I could see in the comment sections, people are still asking questions. They're still confused. They're still saying, wait, so what is severance? So this seminar, and of course, they're not getting any responses. This seminar is where you get responses.
Here's the thing, Kapa Carlos. People don't realize how social media is actually a full-time job. Okay? So how it's in your post, it's just that sometimes there's so many other things that are going on.
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for myself, but sometimes it can be a lot.
Right? 100%. And this is why people need to come register for the seminar.
Yes.
As you said, it's online.
So anyway, in Botswana, people can attend.
Yeah. And it's not just for employees, it's very important that employers as well be a part of it.
Exactly.
Because this is definitely something we wanna check out. April 26th, ne?
Yes.
Where do we register? How can we register?
So what is going to happen is that we will give people a link
Okay.
where they can register and things of that nature. but unfortunately we have a limit of about 100 slots.
Oh.
So once we reach 100,
That's
then unfortunately we can take on more people. But like
Okay.
I said,
Ah,
share a computer,
why-
share a phone, something.
But you know what? That the point really is to get the information out there. So yeah, I
Exactly.
guess only if you try and register and you find kana ngwana batla go register a level 4
Eh.
because it's slot it's a 2,
Eh.
then yeah, fine, you guys can share a computer, you guys can, you know, share, but otherwise 100 pula per head, but please. All right, let's get into what we're talking about today.
Yes.
And I should put my cards on the table. Gompieno ke ngwana hela ka moretsi le nna ke tebe ke ithuta hela 100% because this one we've never discussed
Yeah,
it.
how go about 100% because when we were on the airwaves,
Eh.
we talked about
On radio?
yes.
We talked about this.
Yes.
Ow.
Carlos. Hey.
Yeah, well, there's something. Oh, well, only to be up on the end. But yeah, no, I'm glad that we're talking about it because it's something that a lot of people are dealing with.
Yes.
The economy is not in great shape right now.
Exactly.
You know, it's not going to be in great shape for quite some time, we've established. So this is something that a lot of people are going to be dealing with. We're talking about debt management.
Yes. So usually in our industry we call it debt collection, right?
Okay.
But I want us to talk about it from a perspective, yeah, debt management. Because how do we debt collection? We're trying to recover a debt. But here we're discussing the entire lifespan, yeah, sukoloto. Right? What to look out for when you start getting a debt, especially right?
Yes,
Maybe they might think,
yes.
okay, yeah, spacha so gets a real or kolota or and things of that nature. Yes.
Okay, so who exactly, well, apart from them, who exactly should be paying attention to our conversation?
I think everyone should be taking what we're saying into account, right? I'm putting people on blast. And I say this because how you find there will be people who are assisting you. And these people will be saying, yeah, sign this agreement, sign here, sign there. And they actually never explain the agreement to you. So when you ask them, because I've asked as a lawyer, okay, so how to sign, what am I signing? How ke bailing exiting sign. Dumela. So, you know, sometimes even the people who are assisting people to sign these agreements and so on must be educated about what is in those agreements.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's very important actually what you just said. They're about to get more money than they've been getting.
Yes.
But you know, a lot of these guys, they're young, you know, and speaking from experience myself, how do it gives me a bit of trauma because I started working when I was really young.
Yes.
You know, I was 19 years old and I was getting and I had a pay slip at the end of the month. You know? And I don't know anything about money. I don't know anything about debt. I don't know how to manage none of this stuff.
Yes.
All I know is I'm told, no, this is your maximum. When are you just choosing anything under that number?
I see.
You just choose whatever you want under that number. And that's what I did. I'm a kid. You know, I'm starting to, you know, live by myself, and I'm just like, oh man, I need a couch, I need a car, I need this, I need this, I need this, and that's what I did. I get another okay, maybe I'll be a bit smart about it. I'll ask questions. And no, these folks need to make a sale.
Yes.
Whenever they're trying to get you in there, so they're not interested in you're young, I'll shave, let's walk you through the steps. Or no, I can't remember it so serious. These are going to sign and it's something that I spent maybe, I want to say about 7 or 8 years having to deal with. Because the first 2 years it's fine. The first 2 years you're able to manage it. And then after the third year now you start to realize, well, it's not enough. Maybe let me go back.
Yeah.
So like the
Okay,
consolidation.
sir.
Yeah, so like, yeah, that's how we'll consolidate them. Yeah, get now. And you wake up one day and you are in this mess and you're just like, okay, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And you find it's just simple education.
Exactly.
I wasn't educated on money. I wasn't educated on debt, you know, and it took me a really long time. In fact, I still feel that way somewhat. And that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yes.
I still feel like debt, debt is terrible. It's bad.
Yes.
And now you get into business, you get into entrepreneurship, and you find out what a lot of these businesses that we look up to were built off debt.
Yes, because look, there's good debt and then there's bad debt.
Yes,
right? And the thing about debt is that people buy long in the finance industry, how ya go tsaya loan o tshwanetse go itse gore wa go e diriseng. And it must be something say long tomorrow se ta go busetsa sengwe, like you know, for you to generate an income and so on.
Yeah.
But how it's a loan then that's when you get into dangerous territory. Yes.
Okay. Let's start from the top.
Yes.
How does debt management, how does someone even get into debt?
So the thing that you need to start off by thinking, there are certain things that you want in life, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to start a business, for whatever reason, right? And so sometimes batho ga bana a lot of money to be able to buy those things outright. And that's how the beginning of debt comes in, where they go to someone else or a company or institution, a bank, in order to say, ke batla go reka ntlo ye, ke batla go reka koloi ye, ke batla go simolla business, ke kopa gore le nkadime madi. Right? Nako tse dingwe you find situations where batho, especially December, January, mo batho e leng gore ba ja di salary ncaphu, e be e le gore ba ya go micro lenders, batho ba e leng gore they're called machonisa, right? To say, I need money to go and pay school fees, or I need money to buy groceries for January, you know, things of that nature. Yes. So there are different ways that debt can come about.
Okay.
Yes.
But for us to call it, I guess there needs to be some sort of agreement. There needs to be a contract. There needs to be some terms that are put in front of you.
Yes.
Sign ha excited bo excel pages to tell about some sign about some initially. Can I be out of home or sit on
usually, and I say usually because sometimes batho ba na le go itirela tsa bone hela kong gongwe motho a adima madi ko motshelong. A lot of times madi a adimiwang ko motshelong, there's no written agreement, it's just a verbal one. That's why o kgona go ithala e le gore motshelo o charge 30% per month interest, right? So usually when people get into debt, they have a written loan agreement, right? The loan agreement will have who is taking the debt, so who is this loan being given to, who the person giving the loan is, so the lender. It will talk about how much the money is, the interest on that money, the repayment terms. The repayment terms, how much time do you have to repay, at what interval? So are you repaying at every month, every 2 months, every 6 months, or so on? And how much are you paying in those intervals, right? So the installment that you pay back. And then what it will tell you also is what the loan is for. So you could find maybe the loan is a car loan, a mortgage loan, a personal loan, right? So a personal loan, they'll just say personal loan. Yes. And then sometimes for businesses you find things like the overdraft and things of that nature. So these are the things that then people need to look at to understand or what are their rights and their duties in respect to tsone di-loan tsa teng. And then ha ile gore gongwe ke a car loan or a mortgage loan, there are extra steps like ha go register-iwa blue book ya koloi. Then you'll find, if you look at the registration of the vehicle, you'll find there is a portion that talks about the fact that this vehicle is financed by a certain financier, where it records the debt, right? And then once you've paid off the debt, or maybe you want to sell off the vehicle and use the money to pay the debt first, that's when that thing will be cleared. There's an agreement with whoever is lending you the money, and then so you can transfer. And then with a mortgage loan though, you will then go to a lawyer who is called a conveyancer for them to have you sign a mortgage loan. A mortgage document, and this mortgage bond is going to be effectively the same as the terms of the loan. To say you're being lent this much, this is either the first or second mortgage and things of that nature. Yes.
Something you mentioned in the you mentioned interest.
Yes.
Now there's instances where someone will owe say 5,000, right?
Yes.
And then I have to pay back 5,000. I can't you have to pay back 5,500. And default, which we will get to the default.
Yes.
Please break it down there. What are the limits? What are the parameters there according to the law? Can somebody just decide or no interest rate interest rate kana interest rate ya fluctuate ka mo se ke bokana kgwedi ke bokana ha economy pagama ke a hokotsa kana go bereka ga ganya interest.
So interest is a very funny thing because sometimes people don't pay attention to it. So you have instances where the interest is fixed, right? When you get a loan, and they'll say to you, interest there 10%, right?
Yeah.
And then you will find instances where the interest on the loan or the debt will be prime plus something. And prime, it fluctuates. So when the economy is doing really well, you tend to find that prime it goes low, meaning that the interest reduces, and therefore the amount or installment that you use to service the debt also decreases, right? But when the economy isn't doing so great, then prime goes up, meaning that the interest also increases and the installment that you use to pay the debt also increases. So a particular loan, you might find that you're paying 10 pula every month, going towards servicing the debt. So what happens with that 10 pula is that a portion of it will go to servicing some of the interest, and another portion will go to servicing some of the capital amount. The capital amount being the initial amount that you took in a loan, right? So the reason why there's this up and down is because now the portion here we dwell on to service the interest increases because prime has gone up, and decreases because prime has gone down. Yes.
Who decides prime?
It is the Bank of Botswana, the Central Bank of Botswana. You know, they sometimes actually have what do you call it? These things where they notify people. From this point in time, the prime lending rate will increase or decrease or stay the same and things of that nature. And that's the reason why people might find there was one amount for installment, then the next thing this amount has gone up.
It's gone up, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's happened a lot with mortgages. I don't know in Botswana, but I've been seeing a lot of cases on social media in South Africa where someone is saying, before COVID, for example, 2019,
yes,
I was paying 5,000 for my house mortgage, and then now I'm paying 7.5.
No, it's happened in Botswana as well.
In Botswana
yes,
as well, yeah.
I think it wasn't during COVID, it was just after COVID. I think your 2021s, 22s, where the prime went up. And if you don't have a fixed interest loan, then it meant your installment went up. And that's when you then find people getting into trouble. Because sometimes we overcommit our salaries, because okay, personal loan ya me ha etsa 5 pula, my mortgage it's 250, my motor vehicle it's 500. Ha ke di thakanya zote, they're below my salary, so I can afford them. But then when prime goes up, then those numbers change, meaning you might get to a point where you can't afford to service these loans anymore. Yes.
So if I have a loan with an institution right now, and is my loan, is it a fixed rate or is it a fluctuating rate? How do I find out? I go in the contract.
So they should have told you in the beginning. So as much as explain it, that much I know they explain. They explain to you how much the loan is. They tell you the term of repayment. They tell you what the interest they get, a monthly repayment, and so on. Yes. And then what then tends to happen is that a fixed interest, a higher installment on a monthly basis. And then people then tend to gravitate towards the 1 year prime plus something or prime minus something, because the installment is cheaper. Yes. Can be exactly.
Okay. We can spend all day here. Let's move on a bit.
Yes.
And the reason why we're having this conversation mostly is how do you decide so you've been paying this loan, everything is great, and then unfortunately you lose your job.
Yes.
And now you can't pay back, you can't service these loans or the debt that you have. Because there will be a lot of demand there and all sorts of things.
Yes.
Yeah, let's take us through that process. Well, now they're coming to collect.
Yes. So what usually happens is that the institution, at least from my experience, the institution will talk to you first, or try to talk to you first.
Yeah.
And say, Kana unisite installment dan. Kana unisite installment dan. By the third time, they'll take you to lawyers, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I know some places maybe the debt collection agents, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about those type of institutions, because I am of the opinion that they are seeking to practice law without the protections of a practicing certificate. And I say protections of a practicing certificate because when I collect a debt for a client, right, then my client can actually take me to the law society and take me to task, right? Whereas people that coin themselves debt collection agents don't have that backup. If I tell you the number of matters that I've had to fix because they've been messed up by debt collection agents, because they don't know some of these legal rules, right?
Yes.
And then you find the simplest legal technicality just takes that matter completely out of the water. And then you find a lot of times these debt collection agents are not the ones that sign the court papers. They tell you, the client, to sign your own court papers, because court papers can only be signed on behalf of somebody else by an attorney.
So even that is making you, the client, sign it. That's not legal.
No, you can sign your own papers when you represent yourself, right?
Yes.
But then they're making it seem as if the client is the one that represented themselves. And then they tell client, no, go to court, go and argue on your own matter.
So
I don't know why people keep going to debt collection agents.
Hey.
I don't know why. Maybe because they believe they're cheaper than lawyers. But the problem is that they might appear cheaper. But if somebody comes to me with a defective summons, I'll raise a legal technicality that will get that summons thrown out. And then what? You then have to pay costs. You know what I mean? Anyway, the discussion is not about
debt collectors agencies.
Debt collection
I was about to
agents.
ask what the law says about them, but okay,
right, that's a conversation for another time.
100%.
So when the matter comes to a lawyer, the first port of call is a letter of demand.
Okay.
To say we've been instructed by this client to collect the debt, the amount of money is this, the interest is this, the amount that is required for you to pay, for us not to go to court is this. If you don't pay within a certain amount of time, we're going to go to court and we're going to ask for costs against you.
Okay.
You usually find that in terms of the loan agreement, it says if you default, then the entire amount becomes due. So the capital debt plus all the interest that you would have paid for the duration or the term of that loan. So your capital debt is 5,000 and the interest on that loan is another 4,000, and you would have paid them over 6 years. Now the entire 9,000 is required for you to clear.
Okay.
But when we're still at letter of demand stage, there's still room for negotiation.
Okay.
So what tends to happen is when the client who we are trying to collect the debt from comes, it is possible to negotiate with the bank, and the bank or whatever institution then says, okay, pay for the installments that you missed, right? So maybe if you missed 2 months, then you pay those 2 months worth of installments, and then you carry on like before. Yes.
Every month, yeah.
The problem becomes where a letter of demand comes out and people ignore it, right? Or they don't ignore it, they want to make excuses. Hey, it also plays into the discussion we were having about the freezing of donor funding, right?
Yeah.
American-based donor funding. Because if the employer doesn't get the money, the employer might not be able to pay employees because there's nothing in the coffers. But if the employee has a loan, that loan still needs to be serviced.
Yeah.
The fact that you're not getting paid has nothing to do with your loan, with your the institution that has borrowed you or lent you the money.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So letter of demand passes by, no word or there's no legitimate excuse, then we bring in a writ of summons.
Okay.
So a writ of summons is a document that will say to you, you have 14 court days or 21 court days, depending on how far you are from court, to enter appearance to defend with grounds for defense for why we should not be getting an order against you in default. And this order being for repayment there, madi, interest there, and so on. Right? And then the writ of summons, there'll also be particulars. Why do we believe our client is entitled to what they are asking for? Now, when it comes to that, there are two ways that a matter like that can go. Firstly, it can either be completely ignored by the debtor, in which case we get a default judgment,
Okay.
or the debtor could put in an appearance to defend, in which case we file a declaration and summary judgment. And summary judgment is where we then say, you know what, this defense is just to delay the matter. There's actually nothing here. So give us a summary judgment so that we don't have to go all the way to trial. Yes.
Okay.
So depending on whether the loan is a mortgage loan or personal loan, if it's a mortgage loan, then we can ask for the property that is mortgaged to be specially executable. Meaning if we get judgment, then we can take that property and sell it before we even get to other properties.
Okay. So essentially, as soon as we get this letter of demand, you need to act.
Yes.
You need to do something.
Yes.
Don't just sit back and say it will just magically go away or something.
Exactly.
You need to do something. Okay, so once you get, let's say you get this writ of summons.
Yes.
I get a writ of summons is essentially you have to appear in court or whatever the case is.
Yeah, it says you have to respond to these papers within certain
period.
timelines. If you believe you have a defense, then you should put out what your defense is in court papers. Yes.
And then if again you continue to ignore that, you don't do anything, that's when
Default
the
judgment
client gets
comes in.
a default judgment.
Yes.
Which essentially says, we agree with you, we're not who brought the case.
Yes.
We agree with you, or this person will collect this much, this interest, they have to pay you.
Yes.
And then now they come back to you, and then you say, and
So the thing with default judgment is when we apply for default judgment, or even when we get a judgment from the court, right, we then get what is called a writ of execution.
Okay.
And the writ of execution is the document that a deputy sheriff then uses go gapa. Dilo tsa motho o kolotang.
Yeah.
So ha go gapiwa dithoto yana, then they're sold by public auction to try and recover the money owed. Now when we talk about court process, something that usually arises ke kgang ya induplam.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And the induplam rule says this: if you have a loan, capital debt, 100 pula, the interest that loan has to stop at 100 pula. So if the interest is 10 pula every month and you're not paying anything, it will keep climbing until it reaches 100 pula. So it should be equal to the capital debt. If you pay, right, let's say you've defaulted now. When you default and you pay 20 pula, the full 20 pula will go to interest. It won't touch the capital debt because you've defaulted. So the thing that says you pay part interest, part capital debt is the agreement. So if you default, then whatever you pay starts first going to the interest, right? And then when you stop, it climbs up again until it reaches 100 pula, right? So when the matter goes to court now, what happens is that in asking for an order, we ask for the capital debt plus interest. So high local reaches 100 pula, in 100 again, even not 200. We ask for that. 200 is capital sum. Meaning, when we say interest, we're talking about interest on 200 now, not interest on 100 pula.
And that interest also does it stop at 200 now?
It will now stop at 200. It's not going to stop at 100 anymore. But if you reduce the capital debt, let's say you've started with 100 pula, and then one nanzu dwela and the capital debt goes to 90 pula. In dupla mayari 100% the horela go yema go 90 pula. It won't go up to the 100 pula, which was the initial capital debt. So it will always match the capital debt as at that time. That's the reason why when we go to court and we ask for an order, 100 pula plus 100 pula wa interest, the capital na 200, and that's why the interest then matches the 200 pula. And that's why we always say to people, how ka kona duela esantse ele the 100 pula. As soon as it becomes 200 pula, interest then goes up, and whatever you pay goes to interest first.
And not the capital.
Only once the interest is cleared, that's when it will start on the capital debt. But remember, interest keeps going up. It doesn't stop. The only time it stops is if you've cleared the entire debt.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to break down why it's that way?
It's a rule. It's called the induplam rule. I don't know why it is that way, but it is.
I don't want that thing.
And that's the reason why we always encourage people to try and deal with the debt while we are still at the letter of demand stage. And people should not ignore the summons. You know, I've seen so many people run away from summonses. The fact that is proper service. You know what I mean? The fact that at your gate is proper service. Because a lot of times when people sign the loan agreement, there's something called domicilium.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that domicilium, we tell her in the agreement, it says, if I need to serve you with anything, I will go to the address that you put in the agreement. So if you then move, right? And that's proper service.
Okay. Where do you want to go from here?
So
let's go to judgment.
Yes. Judgment.
Yes.
Now you have your judgment, whether it's default judgment or judgment that's coming from the court, makes no difference, right?
Yeah.
And once you get this judgment, then that's when we get the writ of execution.
Okay.
And the writ of execution is, like I said, what the deputy sheriff then uses for and to sell the property by public auction. So you find if the mortgage property, especially executable, it will be sold by public auction, and then madi atang, what's going to happen is that first it will be used to service the debt.
Okay.
Then it will go back to the debtor. But there are situations where the property will be sold, but right? And this can be true even if it's not a mortgage loan, if there's no specially executable property. And things of that nature, if the person doesn't have enough property to satisfy the debt, deputy sheriff will the Nala Bona return.
Okay.
And this Nala Bona return can then be used to seek civil imprisonment.
Okay.
The debtor because they are not servicing the debt. Now, a lot of people get very confused how civil imprisonment, right? People assume then when they come out, the debt is gone.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case. You can keep going in and out because of civil imprisonment for as long as you don't service that debt. Right? And interest is still running.
Yeah. You're in trouble.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and the way civil imprisonment works is that when I go to court for civil imprisonment, I'm saying Carlos has the ability to service this debt.
Yes.
But he is not doing so.
Yes.
So throw him in jail. This means that if Carlos is then able to show the court, no, actually I have no money, I cannot service this debt, then civil imprisonment should not be given. Because you have nothing. It's like trying to squeeze blood out of a stone.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's not the case.
Yes.
Even if you don't have the funds, even if you can't pay.
Yes. As long as you can show or demonstrate Carlos
so how
so you as Carlos are the one that's supposed to come to court and say, right, with evidence. These are the bank statement minus and things like that.
Yeah.
As you can see, right? But if Carlos is married in community of property,
yes,
it is very different. Because remember, community of property is community of property profit and loss.
Yes.
So Carlos because of community of property.
Yeah.
But I'm like, when I was saying to them, if someone owes maintenance,
yeah,
and they're married in community of property, it means the joint estate owes maintenance.
Yes.
Right? So the joint estate has to service the maintenance.
Yes.
And someone then asked for, okay, what if a husband has an extramarital child, right? And then are we saying the wife then has to pay the maintenance?
Yeah.
And I said yes.
Yes.
Because it's the joint estate.
Yes.
Yes.
Which goes back to education, why people will say an instance like that, or it's just like in community.
I get it. And the thing is, you see, you have to know why you want to marry in community or out of community or with an antenuptial contract.
100%.
Though I think gone are the days where in community of property, otherwise you don't love each other, right?
Yeah.
I think with more public legal education, people are able to weigh their options. There's no one type of property regime that is wrong or right. It just depends on what you want, right? So it's the same thing with debt. So if maybe I want to get married, right? As soon as I get married in community of property, then that debt becomes the debt of the joint estate. Meaning that if I cannot service the debt, then my spouse has the duty to service that debt. Yes. We actually had one matter where people were married in community of property, and the wife didn't tell the husband, right? So she went to an institution, said she is single, not married, signed right?
Yeah.
Well, she's married in community of property. So when the institution came after her, but we found out that she was married in community of property, so we went after the husband. And at that time, they were divorced. But the debt, as dishonest as it was, they were still married in community of property. And we said, community of property says this.
So even if the husband was not involved, no spousal signing and whatever.
Because the Abolition of Marital Power Act makes it clear what you need to do in the instance where one spouse has effectively defrauded the joint estate. And that the husband did not do that. So he was on the hook for this debt.
As well.
And they were divorced at the time. Right?
That's okay. Yeah, of it. Go get educated if you're about to get married.
So yes, so civil imprisonment works like that. The other way that a debt can be recovered is through a garnishee. And a garnishee is where a person has an income from somewhere, and you want to get that income directly from the source. And I use the word income deliberately because sometimes it can be wages from being employed, but sometimes it can be certain things, like if you are a tenderpreneur, right, and you've entered into a tender for supply of chips, let's say, and there's money that the employer, because in tenders they're called employers even though it's not employment in the true sense, right, has to pay certain amount of money, then you can garnish that amount of money servicing at chips before it's an the person who supplied the chips.
The debtor.
Yes.
So how does that work? Do the courts decide and then say, okay, we can garnish this guy's salary or his income?
Yes. So it's actually also a court process as well, where you have to, firstly, the person who you want to garnish from has to be a party to the matter. So, for example, if let's say Tiger Claw, right? You then have to say Tiger Claw Pty Ltd is the garnishee, and then you who has owed the money will be the judgment creditor, and then the person who owes is the judgment debtor. So you then explain what the judgment debtor works for Tiger Claw Pty Ltd, earns X amount of money, we want to garnish 10% of that money or whatever, right? And once you get the garnishee order, then Tiger Claw will split the wages the judgment debtor. By 10% they go the judgment creditor, and then the other 90% to the debtor. Yes.
Okay. I think we're about an hour in.
Are you sure we're an hour in? Too much. You're like, hey, interest there keeps rearing its ugly head.
This is a lot of people don't know these things, because I remember I used to live in a yard, in a multi-residential yard, where this guy owned the bank, and he had decided he lost his job, and then he just packed his things and just moved to the farm, to the middle of nowhere where no one knew where he was, and the bank would drop off would come and drop off these papers and etc and whatever, and for some reason I've always just wondered, okay, because we didn't know where this guy was, the bank didn't know where this guy was, and I'm wondering, okay, what happens then in that instance?
You know what? As long as this person is in Botswana, or even in the entire world, they can be found. There are people called tracers.
Yes.
And they're very good tracers, eh?
Yeah.
That can find a person inside a hole. And the thing is, sometimes you find the reason why you are not found is it's a cost benefit analysis, right? To say, okay, this person owes 10,000. Are we going to spend 100,000 rand?
Looking for them, yes,
right?
yes.
But sometimes it's about the principle.
About the principle,
yes.
They may have said something to you before they disappear.
Exactly,
And you're
number
like,
one.
okay, yes.
And then number two, judgments are valid for 30 years.
Oh.
So I can get judgment right now, we get the hair. Game it's also more deeper and do something spectacular. We get that
Okay, B. No, because I get management. I don't know if you want to add anything to it. I'm looking at my notes here. It looks like we pretty much covered everything that we needed to cover.
Yeah.
Anything else, then
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
How do we get a hold of you, actually?
Oh, yes. So there's the Botswana Thinking Law line, the 78201-425. I learned it this time. And then there's BO Selelo Attorneys, BOSA, where we deal with everything except for criminal law. I give it the criminal law is not my area.
The words I keep saying.
You know one thing that did you say Bacchus?
That's the hottest property in the legal fraternity
right
now.
Yeah, no, he's a fantastic lawyer.
He is. Shame.
So I never want to take on a matter where I'm not sure about what I'm doing, right? Such that Lehake consult with another lawyer, I should know at least what they're telling me is correct. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Bouncing ideas off of each other and things like that. But I'd rather say go and look for a different lawyer. And that's why I always encourage people how an issue, go for an initial consultation. It doesn't have to be Mobosa. It can be at any attorney whatsoever, but go for an initial consultation because you never know where the problem might be. You never know how we can assist you to deal with this thing, rather than and then come 6 months down the line where exactly. Yeah.
BOSA contacts, please.
Botswana Thinking Law, send an email or something of that nature.
Thinking Law. Yes.
Exactly. And I guess we should also mention this podcast is going to be on Spotify as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so it's going to be on YouTube, on Spotify, and we'll try and put clips up in various social media platforms. Botswana Thinking Law, Instagram, you know. I don't know. I'm left with being on Blue Sky now. Just like Botswana Thinking Law everywhere.
I actually got onto Blue Sky last week. Yeah, it's because I was early on Twitter.
Yes.
Like I was on Twitter probably, and this is because I was at Yarona FM at the time, 2008, 2009, and we were forced. The presenters were forced. Well, yo guys, there's this social media thing that's happening. You need to open accounts. You need to be on Facebook. You need to be on Twitter. You need to be, And Twitter was fun back then.
Yes.
It was information. It was fun. And then it just kind of evolved into like this weird space now where I don't even understand what's going on Twitter, right? It's just
you mean X?
X or more. Like literally, I would download it and then log in and whatever and just scroll for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, yo, what's going on now? And initially it used to be the algorithm would hit you with what you view and whatever, And then now there's this For You tab where I'm just like, okay, you know what? I don't know. Maybe it's my algorithm or what. I'm just gonna log off this thing and just delete it off my phone.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back after a few months, and it's even worse.
Yeah.
You know. So I was like, no, I need something to, you know. So I found this blue sky thing. And yeah, I got on there. It feels like Twitter when it started. The only problem is that it's only just Americans. And it's Americans who lean very much to the left. You know, very few in the middle, but majority on the left.
Oh, I see.
And it's just like, okay, if you're normal, I believe if you're normal, you should find yourself somewhere in the middle. You know what I mean? Like, don't be too far right.
Let's not say normal. Let's say if you're not biased.
If you're not biased, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not biased about American politics.
Yeah.
I can pick out, okay, this is nonsense and this makes sense. It doesn't matter who it's coming from, right? And I feel like Blue Sky is just left. Even the nonsense in the left, which exists, you know, it's just like that. They're hyping it, and the thing that the right wingers are doing on Twitter, the left wingers are doing on Blue Sky. And it's just like,
I see. Okay. I saw gore motivate the Bajana gore ba ye go lebella Bojana thinking lo teng.
Because we've seen what Facebook is also turning.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast.
Hey, Mark Zuckerberg, remonetize a lot. So remonetize a lot. Just saying. B, it was absolutely amazing talking as always.
Thank you, Carlos.
Let's do it again next week. One last time for the people at the back who don't listen. Carlos, Rara Semina 26th April.
26th April 2025 from 8:30 to 12:30. The details on how to register will be coming soon, where people complete forms and things of that nature. But obviously confirmation for seminar attendance once we receive the payment.
Fantastic. Please comment, like, share, let the people know Botswana Thinking Law has a podcast, and it's going to be amazing.
You know, no, it's not going to be amazing. It is already amazing.
It's already amazing.
Yes.
It's already amazing.
Thanks, Carlos.
Sharp.